Welcome back. A North Carolina senator got a huge endorsement in his 2020 re-election bid from President Donald Trump himself. This as he faces a primary challenge from within his own party. Joining us from Washington, D.C. tonight, Senator Tom Tillis. Senator, good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
You too, Tim.
All right, so what led up to this? Did you talk to the president, and did you ask him for this endorsement?
We've had ongoing discussions on the campaign and on policy matters for the past 2.5 years. The president and I have a great relationship. He arrived at the decision to endorse me through, I think, a series of discussions with members. I have the full support of my colleagues here in the Senate. I work very closely with people in the White House, and I think he had arrived as a result of all that and the work that we've done together on tax reform, on funding the military, on border security. He knows that I support his policies, and I'm proud to get his endorsement.
So one of the things your opponents and some other Republicans are saying is, you know, because of the Washington Post op-ed, that you criticized President Trump's national security declaration and then voted with him subsequently. Do you regret writing that op-ed now?
Look, the only person in this primary who's written an op-ed of the president is my opponent. My op-ed was to focus on how we move money to the border, not whether we should. And so I know it may seem convenient to try and shift attention away from an op-ed that was written when I was running across the state campaigning with Mike Pence. My wife was campaigning with Laura Trump. We get an op-ed from my opponent who says that he's more supportive of the president, who is basically tearing the president down in the last possible time. My op-ed simply said that if we want to have sustained money to secure the border, like so many other measures I voted on, let's do it in a way that we can make sure that it gets down to the border quickly and not necessarily at the expense of work we're doing at Camp Lejeune and Fort Bragg through military construction. But we'll get a chance to see that op-ed again that my opponent wrote in September, I'm sure a number of times over the next couple of months.
But wasn't that op-ed also about these emergency declarations and utilizing those?
Well, you need to keep in mind on the day of the vote, the president publicly announced that he agreed that we need to make changes to the National Emergencies Act because he also believes that a future Democrat president would abuse it. We also had Mitch McConnell go to the floor and say if we can do the hard work of getting it out of committee, he'll dedicate time to the chamber. That's why I felt comfortable with the vote that I took, and I think that the president understands that future administrations could abuse his power, and we need to do something about it.
What do you say to some of those Republicans that are still out there tonight that are concerned? I mean, you've heard it for years, even when you're House Speaker here, that you're not conservative enough, are concerned about that op-ed. What do you say to them tonight? And are you concerned about, even if you do win, having to spend a lot of money?
Well, what I would say to my friends on Republican friends and those who supported Trump, Trump clearly supports me, and I've supported his policies almost 95% of the time over the time that he's been president. There's only one other Congress member who has consistently been in the 90th percentile for supporting policies, not because they're just policies that President Trump moved forward, because they're policies that are helping the American worker, they're helping farmers back down in North Carolina, they're policies that are responsible for record low unemployment and record high job creation. And I'll remind all my colleagues to take a look at my record as Speaker of the House. Take a look at the work that we did on Second Amendment rights, life, taxes, spending. We've got a good conservative record to run on, and we just have to refresh our friends' memories, and I think that they'll understand that that's one of the reasons why the president is supporting me in my re-election.
One of the reports recently was that you missed a Veterans Affairs Committee meeting for a fundraiser with Mike Pence. You mentioned him. We know back in 2014 that you criticized Kay Hagan for missing armed services committees often for fundraisers. Do you deserve that same criticism back?
Well, I think you have to look at the context. That committee hearing is something that one of my bills got reported out favorably. I was also there in the morning reporting out the personnel mark that had great progress for military families, a 3.1% pay raise for our men and women in uniform. Ms. Hagan left for a fundraiser in New York. I was down in my great state with Vice President Pence laying the groundwork for the president's reelection and my own reelection. We were able to complete the work. She was the chair of the Emerging Threats Subcommittee. It was a classified briefing when ISIS was on the rise. I think we're talking about an apple and an orange.
All right, so back to North Carolina for 1 second, because as you know, Medicaid expansion is a very hot topic here. And Democrats have brought up a point that you actually made in our studio back in 2014, that you thought you didn't have an ideological objection to expanding Medicaid and that the state and the governor should consider expansion. How do you feel about that today?
Well, what I said, I didn't say that we should expand it. I think when the facts change, you always look at it. You know, I am the Speaker of the House who signed the bill that made it illegal to expand Medicaid under Obamacare because it was a bad deal. It wasn't fiscally sustainable. All I said was we want to always be looking at decisions we made, determine whether or not the facts have changed, and then be mature enough if they've changed and it makes sense for North Carolinians. If it makes sense for improving health care outcomes, do it. But if it's the same bad deal, if it's not sustainable, if it's not going to help people who need medical care, then don't do it. But that's a decision the legislature needs to make.
All right, Senator Tom Tillis up in Washington tonight. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for some time.
You too, Tim. Thanks.